I was 16 when I packed my bags and left, thinking I'd come back when things got better. But years passed, and somehow, I'm still the villain in their version of the story. Maybe it's easier to blame the one who left than admit the house was already burning. I, 29F, have an older stepbrother, Chris, 42M, who has been a nightmare ever since my mom married his father. A little background. Our parents got married when I was 4 and he was 17. Both had previously lost their spouses. After the wedding, we moved to the US because my mom had American citizenship from her first marriage. Although I was born in the US, my mom and I returned to Colombia after my dad passed away when I was 1. My stepdad gained residency through marriage, and Chris, being a minor, was also granted residency. Chris never liked me. My earliest memories of him are filled with constant bullying. Since he was studying locally and still living at home, he was often left in charge of me. But instead of looking after me, he would lock me in the guest bathroom or the shed outside. He would steal my lunchbox whenever he was the one dropping me off at school. Things only got worse when he started harming my pets. I have an old cat who has been with me for almost 22 years, and Chris tried multiple times to run her over with his car. My parents never believed me. He was the golden child. My mom had always wanted a son over a daughter, so Chris was her priority. The bullying just kept getting worse and creepier. He had this long key for the bathroom. The door was designed in case it got locked by accident. One could open them by inserting a long stick or key through a small hole on the outside. He would use it to walk in on me showering. My underwear would disappear sometimes and I know for a fact it was him. He also started taking pictures of me sleeping. One night I woke up to him taking care of himself next to me while I slept. I yelled obviously. My parents came over, but he wasn't in trouble. I was 4, tempting him. I was 14 when this happened. He was 27. No one stepped in to help me, and Chris only grew bolder until he did something so traumatic that I'm still in therapy for it. By the time I was 16, I couldn't take it anymore. I reached out to my half-brother, Sam, 48M, the son of my biological father's first wife, to ask if I could live with him and his wife, Sandy, for the last 2 years of high school. When Sam learned what had been happening, he confronted my mom. She didn't care. Her only response was that he could take me as long as he never asked her for money. That was that. Sam and Sandy became my legal guardians, and I moved in with them, bringing my cat and our old family dog. I refused to leave any living creature in Chris's care. My parents never once checked in on me. My extended family from my father's side, however, immediately stepped up. They came together to ensure I could finish high school properly and continue to college. I have no relationship with my maternal family. Thanks to my paternal relatives, including Sam's mother and her family, I was able to earn both my bachelor's and master's degrees without student debt. Now, I work as a nurse practitioner. I still live with Sam, his wife, and their 2 kids, paying a small amount for rent not because they asked me to, but because I feel it's the least I can do after all they've done for me over the past 13 years. Some people might wonder why I haven't moved out yet, but the cost of living where I am is extremely high, and Sam insists I stay until I've saved enough to buy my own home. For years, everything was peaceful until my mom recently messaged me out of the blue. I hadn't heard from her since I was 18 when she told me she was no longer responsible for me. Her message was oddly cheerful, saying she missed me and asking how I'd been. I found it unsettling but decided to be polite and gave her a general update about my life. She seemed particularly interested in my career, mentioning that she knew I was a nurse but didn't realize what kind. Then, she started asking about my salary. I didn't give her any details, just told her I made enough to cover my expenses. My mom then started texting me about Chris, saying he was struggling financially because of his student debt. Apparently, he never completed a degree, constantly switching careers. Now, he works as a salesman at my stepdad's used car business, but most of his paycheck goes toward paying off the massive student loans he accumulated over the years. I told my mom I was sorry to hear he was having a tough time and wished him luck. That's when she finally got to her real point. She told me I needed to pay off his student debt so he could start making the money he deserves as the man of the family. I immediately turned off my phone. When I got home, Sam was surprised to see me back earlier than usual. Sandy wasn't home yet, so I told him what had happened and showed him my mom's messages. I don't think I've ever seen Sam this angry. He told me to block my mom, stepdad, and Chris if I hadn't already. After discussing everything with Sam and Sandy, I decided to take a short break. I called my boss to request the next 2 days off, which, combined with my regular days off, gave me a 4-day weekend. My boss was very understanding and even offered to help if I needed anything. But things escalated the next day. My mom and Chris actually showed up at Sam's house, demanding to talk to me. I was alone at the time since Sam and Sandy were at work, and the kids were at school. The moment I saw them outside, I called Sam and told him what was happening. He told me not to open the door and that he was on his way. My mom stood outside screaming that I owed them for raising me and that my sweet brother deserved my financial help. Meanwhile, Chris was circling the house, trying to find an unlocked window or door. Luckily, all the windows had safety bars, and the only other entrances were a secured garage door and a locked backyard door. Just to be safe, I also locked the garage door from the inside. I won't repeat exactly what Chris called me when he spotted me through a window, but he basically said they should have abandoned me as a baby because I had grown up to be a bee. Then, he started pounding on one of the windows so hard that he actually cracked the glass. Eventually, he gave up on the window and went back to the front door, clearly trying to kick it down. I wasn't too worried since it was a security door, but I was still terrified. He and my mom kept cycling through threats, insults, and desperate pleading until suddenly, I heard Sam's furious voice yelling at them to get lost. I only witnessed what happened from the window, but I saw Sam practically drag both my mom and Chris off the porch. They moved far enough away that I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw their expressions change. They both went pale and looked terrified before scrambling to their car and speeding off well beyond the legal limit. Sam came inside shortly after, immediately switching into overprotective big brother mode. He kept apologizing, hugging me, and making sure I was okay. Moments later, Sandy arrived, looking like she was ready to commit a felony on my behalf. Apparently, Sam had threatened to press charges against Chris for what he did to me when I was 16. His trump card? My stepdad was willing to testify against his own son. That was enough to scare Chris away, but unfortunately, my mom wasn't backing down. In the past 3 days, she has been relentless texting, calling nonstop from different numbers, and even rallying people who claim to be my maternal relatives to harass me for money. She insists that the money is rightfully hers, claiming it's my late father's, missed child support. Sam is now helping me find a lawyer to file a restraining order against my mom, and I plan to take my stepdad's offer to testify by pressing charges against Chris. I can't say I forgive my stepdad for not stopping his son sooner, but at least he's trying now. From what I've gathered, Chris did something to one of my stepdad's relatives, which led to a major fallout between them. I also decided to take my boss up on her offer and extend my time off. But honestly, between all of this chaos, my vacation days are getting eaten up, and I think my therapist might need a therapist after all of this. Thankfully, my dark sense of humor and the unwavering support of my paternal family are helping me stay sane for now. Update. I didn't expect to be making an update so soon, but my mother is relentless. To those who offered kind words and advice earlier, thank you. It truly helps to have support during difficult times. I followed the advice to freeze my credit, and I'm also getting a new phone for personal use. For now, I'll have to keep my old phone for work. Now, onto the situation. We are officially moving forward with pressing charges, and we're also considering a civil lawsuit against my mother for 2 years' worth of unpaid child support. We're unsure of our chances, but Sam is ready to go scorched earth. Meanwhile, my mother has launched a new smear campaign against me. She's publicly accusing me of falsely claiming that my stepbrother, Chris, assaulted me. She's even going as far as to paint me as a temptress who supposedly spent years trying to seduce my brother. To make matters worse, a few relatives who I just learned are my aunts have joined in, claiming they witnessed it all. I've never met these women in my life. The biggest revelation, however, came from my stepfather. He actually commented on one of my mom's posts, outright calling her a liar and accusing his own son of being a predator. That's when I finally learned what caused the falling out between them. Chris had gone after one of my stepfather's nieces. I don't know her exact age, but if I'm thinking of the right person, she's around my age. If not, she's even younger. My biological father's side of the family has also stepped in on social media, calling out my mother's lies. She always claimed she was an orphan with no family, but now she suddenly has 3 sisters backing her up. It's an absolute mess. For now, I'm just watching everything unfold while being a stay-at-home aunt. My nephews are thrilled we finish homework and then head out for wild adventures. My boss has been incredibly supportive and helped me file paperwork for a leave of absence. I should be off for about 6 weeks, followed by a period of mostly working from home. It's not exactly a positive update, and to be honest, this entire situation is exhausting. But at the very least, I'm enjoying the extra time with my nephews. One last thing, no, my mom is not in a romantic or sexual relationship with my stepbrother. Some people have speculated about this, but that's not the case. The truth is, my mom always wanted a son. I was a disappointment to her simply because I was born a girl. She has always treated Chris as if he were her real son, and I believe she genuinely loves him as a mother. She made sure to remind me throughout my childhood just how much of a letdown it was for her that I wasn't a boy. I hope the title follows the rules. I was encouraged to share my story here, but I wasn't sure where to begin. My mother was widowed when I was just a year old. My biological father was significantly older than her, over 20 years her senior, and she was his second wife. After his passing, she remarried her childhood sweetheart and legally adopted his 17-year-old son. My father was American, while my mother is Colombian. I was born in the US, but we moved back to Colombia for a few years before returning to the US when I was 4. Throughout my life, my mother constantly voiced her disappointment that I was a girl. She would say things like, "If you were a boy, maybe we could have gotten more from your father," or "Girls are so useless." To her, I was nothing but a burden. She took my inheritance and wasted it, mostly on my stepbrother. Whenever she had guests over, she would introduce me by joking about how I ruined her body and wasn't even worth it since I was just a girl. Many of her friends believed I had a mental disability because she spread false rumors, even using offensive slurs to describe me. She blamed everything on my gender, insisting that because I was a girl, I was inherently inferior. During holidays, I was always left behind with a sitter because I was too much of a problem child and would supposedly ruin things for her sweet son. The only family photo we have together was taken when I was 5. If I got anything nice with my own money, my mother would take it from me if it was something like makeup or clothes, saying I wasn't attractive enough or worthy enough to have such nice things. I should just stick with a plain face since it will make it easier for me to find a job when I was done with high school. She had no intentions of letting me go to college. But the worst part is she never protected me. My stepbrother is a predator. At first he just bullied me, stealing my food, locking me in dark places. When I hit puberty though, he began to do worse things. Walking on me when I showered, even if I locked the door, stealing my underwear, watching me sleep, and he even essayed me when I was 16 and he was 29. My mother blamed it on me, saying I was tempting her poor sweet boy. My biological half-brother and his wife rescued me when I was 16. They took me in, provided me with a stable home, and, with the support of my paternal family, helped me complete my education. Even my father's first wife contributed, showing me more kindness and care than my own mother ever did. Now, at 29, I have built a successful career as a nurse practitioner and am saving up to buy my own home. When my mother found out, she started demanding that I hand over my money, insisting that, as my mother, she is entitled to it. She also expects me to take responsibility for my abusive stepbrother's student loans. Since I refused to comply with her demands, she has taken to social media, accusing me of being a temptress trying to destroy her son's life. She also claims I am ungrateful for all the love and care she supposedly provided and insists that I owe her repayment. To strengthen her false narrative, she has enlisted a group of women whom she claims are my aunts to support her accusations. I had always believed my mother was an orphan, as she never spoke of any family. But now, out of nowhere, I supposedly have 3 aunts who claim to have witnessed how horrible I am. Update. This may be my final update regarding the ongoing situation with my mother and stepbrother, as we are now officially moving forward with legal action. However, amidst all the chaos, I finally had a moment of laughter. I haven't shared much about my biological father in my previous posts. He passed away when I was just a year old, so I never really got to know him. The only picture I have of him is one where he's holding me as an infant. Most of what I know about him comes from stories told by his family. What I do know is that he was financially well off, not to the extent that I would never have to work, but enough that, with smart financial choices, I could have lived comfortably. Neither my half-brother Sam nor I knew that my father had specifically set aside anything for me. Sam is his son from his first marriage, while I was born from an affair that led to my father's second marriage. I had always believed that whatever inheritance my father left me had been squandered by my mother to support her favorite son, my abusive stepbrother Chris. She often dismissed the idea of daughters needing an inheritance, insisting that I should just marry a wealthy older man as she did. Since my mother and Chris have been harassing me, we recently visited my father's lawyer to retrieve some important documents for the lawsuit we're preparing. The lawyer, an older gentleman, was also my father's best friend and bears a striking resemblance to him. When we met, he greeted me warmly with a hug and expressed how happy he was to finally see me. His wife was also present, and she embraced me as well, insisting that we must come over for dinner sometime. Once we caught up, we discovered that my mother had been forging receipts to withdraw money from my trust, a significant amount. Some of these fraudulent transactions occurred even while I was under Sam's guardianship. What makes this even worse is that she was never the executor of my trust, meaning she had to provide legitimate receipts for any withdrawals. Instead, she submitted fake receipts claiming expenses on my behalf under the pretense that I was still in medical school. I graduated in 2021. Her scheme has now completely unraveled, and she's in serious legal trouble. This isn't just a matter of financial misconduct, it's outright fraud, and I no longer have the option to simply ignore it. Because she falsely claimed me as a dependent on her taxes, my father's lawyer had been reimbursing her for alleged expenses. He made it clear that this situation can't just be settled in civil court, he had to notify the IRS and the police. To make matters worse, she's also been using my social security number for unauthorized purposes. Huge thanks to those who advised me to freeze my credit, you truly saved me. I probably won't be able to post for a while, as I'm about to be incredibly busy dealing with everything. Honestly, I'm exhausted by everything that has happened. If my mother had just left me alone, I wouldn't have even known about her stealing from my trust. The trust was structured so that I could take control of it once I provided proof of marriage or college graduation. Since I wasn't aware it existed, I never submitted the paperwork, meaning she could have continued draining it indefinitely if only she hadn't been so greedy and reckless. Now, I'm in the process of securing what remains of my trust. There's still a substantial amount left, enough for me to buy a house or condo if I combine it with my savings, while still leaving me with extra funds to invest or use wisely. However, I might hold off on making any big purchases for now, considering my mother still has access to my social security number, and I need to ensure everything is fully secured first. Update. This is more a personal rant than full-on update. Things are only starting on the legal side of things, so no real update or information I'm allowed to share. This is more on the personal side of things since I just came home from having my mother harass me in a bar. It was fun. Short background. My mother is a greedy liar that let her stepson Chris, who's 13 years older than me, abuse me since I was a small child. First physical abused, then SA. SA started when I was 14 until I was 16. Now she wants me to clear his student debt. And she had been mooching off my biological father's inheritance. As for last night, well, I decided to go out with some girlfriends for a girls' night. My half-brother Sam and his wife Sandy have been pushing me to go out for a while. We went to a local bar. I mostly stick to the stools by the bar as I'm a massive introvert, but I like seeing my friends having fun. So I was simply drinking and talking to the bartender in passing. Well, my good mood was ruined when I noticed my mother, thankfully alone, walk to me. The moment she saw me, she pretty much launched herself to hug me and began crying, saying how much she had missed me and how different I looked. I was trying really hard to get away from her, but she began causing a scene. She started begging for us to reconcile. That she was sorry I took my stepbrother's affection the wrong way. That they both love me and want me to live with them. She was loud and people were looking at me. Some even looked sorry for her, and I had people encouraging me to hug my mom back. It was embarrassing and just so wrong. I just exploded and told her to leave me alone and walked out. That was even worse because she kept following me with 2 or 3 randoms calling me an asshole and terrible daughter. She just kept swearing Chris truly cares for me and wants us to be a family again. She even said that he found me so beautiful that he couldn't help himself when he essayed me, she said, when he made love to you. I was a minor when he attacked me. He was almost 30. I just started crying and screaming at her to go away and leave me alone. Thankfully one of my more sober friends called Sam and he came over very fast. He scared away my mom and took me home. I'm now 100% sure I don't want to go out. For people wondering why I never call the cops, I called the cops since I was 11 to report the abuse. I reported at 16 what he did to me. They took his side. I don't trust them. I truly believe cops don't care about SA victims. I'm just writing this to get it out of my system. My therapist is unavailable, so Reddit is the next best thing. Update. Hey, been a bit. Sorry for the radio silence. I had some people asking for updates, but things had been pretty quiet until this weekend, so I had nothing to post. I know people usually do a recap or something like that, so TLDR, my mother has always preferred my F29 stepbrother Chris, M42. He was my abuser growing up and SA'd me when from the time I was 11 to 16 when I moved with my half-brother after the worst attack. I recently was tracked down by my mother and she along my stepbrother have been harassing me since. Currently I'm on a legal fight against them to recover some stolen inheritance from my father and trying to get an RO, among other matters. This weekend once again my mother decided to accost me at work. I was working from home doing clerical work for the clinic I work at. I'm a nurse practitioner, but took some clerical duties to be able to work from home when the mess with my mother and Chris began. Since then the time I could work from home has ended, so I am back in the clinic taking patients. For the most part, Saturday went well and quiet. On Sunday, I noticed a patient with my mother's first name but a different last name. My mom has a very distinctive, old-fashioned name that I've only ever come across twice in my life. Given the large Latino community in my area, we're Colombian, though I was born in the US to an American father, I initially assumed it was just a coincidence. However, it turned out to be my mother using a fake last name. The moment I recognized her, I immediately contacted my boss, who was already aware of the situation. She promptly approached my mother and asked her to leave the premises. To clarify, before any debate arises, my mother was there for a routine checkup, not an emergency. She wasn't refused care due to any protected reason, but rather because I, as a staff member, felt unsafe in her presence. State law allows this. There are plenty of other clinics available, so she had other options for her checkup. If she had been in distress or needed urgent medical attention, we wouldn't have been able to turn her away. As expected, my mother reacted poorly, demanding that I personally see her as a patient. My boss stood her ground, making it clear that my mother needed to leave or the police would be called. I watched everything unfold from the security cameras as they argued in the waiting room. Eventually, my mother lost her temper, threw a letter at my boss, and stormed out, even shoving a woman on her way out. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Afterward, my boss handed me the letter and assured me she would instruct the front desk not to assign me any patients with my mother's first name. I took a break and decided to read the letter, mainly to determine if it could be used as evidence for my restraining order. This is a translation to my best capabilities. My lovely daughter. It breaks my heart that you won't talk to me. I love you dearly, and all I want is to make up for the time we've lost. You're the only connection I have left to your father, whom I loved so much. I know there have been a lot of misunderstandings about Chris. He cares about you deeply, and I wish you would give him a chance to prove it. He's always spoken about how beautiful you are and how much he wishes you could spend more time together. He truly adores you, and I hope you'll take his feelings into account. He even asked me to encourage you to marry him, and I think it's a wonderful idea. Since Papa's stepfather and I are likely getting divorced, this would be the perfect way for the three of us to remain a family. Chris keeps talking about how much he wants to raise your child together. Let me know when you're ready to shop for a wedding dress. Mom. I'm gonna share a few personal notes here. I am unable to get pregnant. After Chris' attack, I had some medical complications that have left me unable to conceive. My mother knows about it. Chris knows about it. The cops know about it. They rule the whole thing as consensual sex, and because I was 16, the legal age of consent, nothing was done. I showed the letter to my lawyer, and he added it to the growing list of evidence for the restraining order. There's still no court date, and the police don't consider my situation urgent enough to process a temporary order. Thankfully, there is one officer who has been incredibly supportive and is taking my case seriously, but most either don't care or are too overwhelmed with other cases to prioritize mine. Update: since it's only been 3 days, I'll add this here instead of making a new post. Chris has been arrested. He kidnapped a 2-year-old girl, his cousin's daughter, of all people. Fortunately, she was found safe and unharmed. I'm relieved she wasn't missing for long, because who knows what his intentions were. If I learn more, I'll share an update. In the meantime, I'm pushing harder to use this incident to finally secure that temporary restraining order.